Hi, my name is Corey Mascara. I'm going to be the instructor for this retreat titled Starting Fresh. One of the things I've just been seeing for people, and particularly in my students, is this deeper desire for something new to emerge. We've all been through a global pandemic and we're still navigating it. And that can create both a stagnancy but also a pressure cooker type experience that really starts to burn away some of our older patterns, or at least begins to challenge them. And then the tension and the stress of that challenge, we're troubled into a deeper conversation with ourselves, with our soul. And from that place, something that's truer and more aligned craves to emerge. I'm not sure if that's been your experience, but if you're watching this video, it's possible that the theme of starting fresh is resonating for you right now. And I invite you to explore this weekend as an opportunity to really reset. There's a lot we can learn from our past, and there's a lot we want to take from our past into the future. But there's a lot there that's no longer serving the person that we're trying to become. And sometimes to step into that new person and navigate the fear that's involved with that and all of the different layers of conditioning requires a dedicated period of time to just focus all of your energy there. And that's what we're going to be doing over this weekend. The retreat is going to be broken into 3 categories: letting go, reconnecting, and looking forward. And the idea of these themes is that you'll have an opportunity to look at what have you been holding on to, consciously or subconsciously, that is in some way getting in the way of the newness that wants to emerge, the you that you're becoming that is craving to express itself. And really explore, why do we hold on to these things? What's happening on a subconscious level that keeps us bound to these patterns? We'll have a dedicated period of time to going into that and exploring particular practices and meditations that help facilitate that letting go process. And then we're going to spend a dedicated period of time to reconnecting to you, how to parse some of the noise of the media, culture, family, friends, even yourself, long-standing beliefs about yourself, from a truer sense of who you are that maybe you've been out of touch with for a very long time, if not most of your life, which is a very common experience for people. And again, a retreat serves as a dedicated place to put all of your energy toward that exploration, to re-find your inner anchor and your inner compass. And then from there, we get to explore, where does this energy want to go? What does it look like to orient to the future? Not from a place of just the mind manifesting and writing out a vision board and I want this, I want that. That can also just be patterns of conditioning playing out. The media that has told you your whole life what you should want, right? I'm less interested in that for you, and I'm more interested in you getting in touch with something deeper. When you are still, when you feel safe, when you feel full, where does your energy orient? Where does your heart orient? Where does your soul orient? And then when that surfaces, how can we protect that and guide that so that it can actually lead us into the creation of the next step of our life? And so for that exploration, we'll have journal prompts, meditations, visualizations, and it will be on the tail end of this retreat, having done some of this early work in letting go, reconnecting. And in my experience, once you do that foundational work, the manifestation, the creation, the mind that is pulled in possibility, that tends to be more of an organic emergence rather than something that you have to force. So I always look forward to that part of this experience. Now, I have a video that goes into these 3 topics in more depth. I understand you might be new to my teachings. You might want to understand, how do I orient to these things? Because letting go is a big topic, reconnecting is a big topic, and then things like creation and manifestation, sometimes that can get a bit out there. And I do take fundamentally different stances to these themes and teachings, and I think a lot of other folks, especially in the more mainstream way that many people talk about them. So if you're interested in understanding some of the principles that will guide how we orient to these themes, just continue listening. It'll be a bit of a longer video, but it will give you a sense of what to expect in this retreat and how I hold space for this particular exploration. So I really hope you can join. Check out the video, and then at the end, we'll reconnect here. So the retreat is going to be oriented around these 3 themes. The first one being letting go. The semantic paradox of letting go, right? It implies that we need to push away from something. So it actually already creates an oppositional relationship to an experience that's here, right? Which is in some sense already an issue when it comes to leading a full life. If we have any sense of what is present and then fighting, resisting it, we're already reinforcing this loop of being at war with ourselves. Doesn't mean that I'm saying we should want it to be here and that we want it to stay here. Like, there's good reason to want to shift and change what we're experiencing internally. But the mechanism of working with it, since it is already an aspect of your experience, and any pattern that is arising has some positive intention, if we take the perspective of bad, go away as like the default response, we're setting ourselves up for some struggle. Not just an internal war, but actually not being able to let go of the thing that we're trying to release. If we're holding on to something, if it's still here and we're still running loops with it as a pattern, as an emotional pattern, as a behavior, it means there's some part of us that is still attached to it, that it is still gaining some benefit from it. The positive intention of holding on is the thing that often gets overlooked in the conversation of letting go. And that part is not going to release whatever it is you're holding on to until it sees that you have the resources to navigate and be with a life without that holding on. Even if it is just the identity of being someone that is in control, that doesn't move on. I mean, think of potentially just being wronged by someone in the past and you're still ruminating about it and holding the grudge, and you say like, oh, I should get over this. But there's another part of you, it's like, I don't want to be the kind of person that just gets over this. Let this person get away with it. No, I need to hold my fury and my anger, my hatred, right? So it's in some sense like killing us inside. We feel the suffering from it. But the secondary gain of it is that we have the identity of being the person that doesn't let this person get off the hook. So it's an example of how a part of us might be pressing on the gas to release something and another part of us is pressing on the brake. And if we don't have an honest conversation with that part that is pressing on the brake, it's not going to lift up. It's just going to stay there. And this is why people go in cycles for years and years and years. It's like, want this, but stay here. The first big part of what we're going to be exploring in this retreat is just where do those snags come up for you in the letting go process? What subconsciously is grasping and holding on, even though you might be saying very consciously, I'm ready. I want to let go. I want to release. So the interesting thing that happens here is sometimes we get closer to the part of us that's holding on and we're like, oh, it's actually not time to let go yet. I still have to like run what we could say is like the karmic trajectory of holding on. I really need to see all aspects of that pattern. And you learn so much about yourself when you actually allow yourself to go through patterns, including patterns of grasping onto something that you know you don't like. You get to see all the ins and outs and the intricacies of why you're holding on and aspects of your psyche that are causing that and the complicated emotions and how it's maybe related to your parents or other things. Like, it gets deep and rich, and you only get that opportunity if you choose to show up and look intimately. If you want to just take the perspective of that's bad, push it away, move on. In my experience and my perspective, it's a deeply lost opportunity. Not only does it mostly not work, it's just a lost opportunity to really learn about yourself so that you can fully release and then step into the next chapter of your life without the residue of that thing. Because you might put a Band-Aid on it and say, oh, I'm not thinking about this, and then you just focus positive on the things you want to create. But whatever it was that was creating that pattern in the first place, causing you to hold on, I guarantee that's going to show up in some other relationship or some other setting or your next job or your next workplace or the next community you're with. This stuff is deep and it requires descending into it to really understand what's going on. And only when you descend, you touch, you meet with compassion, you reinforce a sense of safety on the deepest level in you, does the system actually go, oh, it is okay to release this. I have patterns that I spent years just running through, but I did it with like a ton of love and space. I wasn't suffering deeply from it. Just like, whoa, here it is again. Doesn't seem like it's ready to let go. Let's see how this one plays out. But each time I went through that, something softened and softened and softened. And then when it often isn't this like big aha, like, oh, now I release, done. It's just like you wake up one day and that urge to do that thing is not there, or the rumination about that person is no longer happening, and there's just an inner spaciousness because you did the work. You let that play out. You gave it presence. You allowed it to unhook on the deepest level. That's what I'm interested in the conversation of letting go. So I don't have any grand delusions that, we're going to come into this retreat and then, you just let go of all your stuff. Great. Like, I don't know anywhere that actually happens. But what I am very committed to us exploring, and what I can almost guarantee you'll get to touch if you attend, is really starting to see clearly what it is that is reinforcing the patterns of holding on and what a pathway to releasing looks like. Sometimes that can be very quick. There's certain things we just need to see, touch, and then they release. Other ones are deeper. And some of them are like lifetime karmic patterns, you could say. And those ones are especially rich. So that's letting go. Reconnecting, the next theme. If you're following me, you've seen me talking about all the different ways that we actually lose ourselves in the noise of life. The literal noise of the busyness around us and lots of stimulation coming in, the media, other people's ideas. I don't know a human who is above being impacted by that. We're social creatures. We're wired to be attuned to what's happening around us. And we're wired to also take it seriously and to really wonder does this person's perspective of me, is there merit to this? And I think for many of us, there's so much coming in that it just gets really hard to locate ourselves in it. What is my wisdom versus someone else's opinions? What is my inner truth versus trauma fear that is arising? Who am I when I'm actually not caught up in the next to-do or agenda item or goal that I'm working to get toward, with this idea that once I do, it's going to give me my permanent refuge? Goals are exciting. I love them. I have a lot of future visions for myself. It's actually a big part of how I feel thrill and energy in my life. And I am always checking myself to make sure that I am not mistaking any attainment of some future moment as the thing that is going to actually help me find myself or be my refuge. It doesn't work like that. It's always right now. Can I connect on the deepest level to what is arising as true in me now? And you condition that now moment by moment by moment and get stronger and stronger and stronger. And then your life can be led by a place of deep alignment rather than by psychological noise or emotional fear or past patterns that are keeping you safe potentially and maybe giving you a decent life. I'm not saying that this stuff leads to terrible lives. But what it does happen is it slowly chips away at our self-trust, and we ultimately end up making decisions that are just slightly outside of alignment with the deepest sense of who we know ourselves to be. And from the spiritual perspective, I'll just say it outright. I don't actually know what a more worthwhile journey is in this lifetime than being ruthlessly committed to listening on the deepest level for what is most true in your particular karmic path, your dharmic path, what you've been brought into this earth, this human realm to uncover, to be the expression of you, right? You could put the spiritual stuff aside. It's just there is a fundamental expression of you. Don't you want to know what that is? Can you think of anything more fundamental than that? The opposite is betrayal. And you can say things, well, it should be more about taking care of other people and this and helping other people live their life. How are you going to help other people live their fullest lives if you haven't actually done the work of knowing what that actually looks like? It gets rich, it gets tricky, it gets messy, it's complicated. But it's actually incredibly simple once you are attuned to the pulse of truth that we're talking about attuning to. And then the next thing is envisioning, aka manifesting, looking forward. Manifesting is a complicated word, and I don't refer to it in the more mainstream way of just, that's what I want. Think positively about it and get it. I don't think that many people are talking about manifestation that way, but I think that's like the caricature version of it. So I think what is true is that we are manifesting in each moment. We are creating our reality based on how we're showing up in this moment. That does condition what happens in the next moment. The idea that you just need to have positive thoughts to get that is bullshit, because how things actually get created and inspired from your being is so much deeper than just a momentary mental storyline of I want this or I should do this. Right? You can want something, but something deep in your system is unresolved to having it. And that kind of going back to our first point of like with letting go, we often say we want that, but in other parts, pressing the brakes. Same with manifesting. I think there are certain settings and situations in life where we actually just need to flood the mind with what we want and like convincing ourselves that we can have it to get ourselves out of a negative situation. I think of the documentary series, the Netflix series Made. I don't know if anyone watched that, but this woman who was just in deep poverty and an abusive relationship and just no resources. And sometimes in those moments, opening up to the fullness of our trauma might just be a lot. Like we might end up swimming in it. And so to break out of that so that we can actually have some space to feel sometimes requires going like, no, my life can look like this. It can look like this. It can look like this. And you just become so single-mindedly focused on that so that it drowns out any sort of doubt until you break through it. I think there are scenarios where that is actually an effective strategy. And, anyone who's gotten out of a dire situation most likely has experienced the truth of that to some degree. So I'm not dismissing that entirely. What I am more poking at is using that as the thing that is going to ultimately create our life in like a full aligned way is definitely limited. Even in those experiences where we use the mind in that way to break us out of something, it's like it breaks us out of something so that we can actually have more space to do the real work of figuring out who am I, what is next for me. But it's not that strategy that then takes you all the way to the deepest inner peace and fulfillment. It's used temporarily. So what I am interested in for this, like letting go, the looking forward and envisioning stage is for you to actually get quiet enough to hear what is the inspiration that's moving through you, what wants to be created in terms of a project, a relationship, or your life in general. There's no need to poo-poo wanting things or people or a certain setting. I think sometimes in the spiritual space, when we're talking about inner freedom, there's a condemning of that and saying that's not the real thing. Well, in this human realm, it is the real thing. I mean, your life in each moment involves something that's around you, people that are around you, a job that you're engaging in. And so the actual manifestation of those things is an expression of internal movement. It impacts and shifts what's happening around us. If you drop into a space of feeling really spacious and free and grounded and open to receiving what is next in my life, it's not like your body's just going to dissolve and now you're in a space of consciousness and emptiness and there's nothing there. You're still in the world. You're still in the world. So that has to express itself through you and create something through you. And so what that creation might be is just like, whoa, I'm like really interested in a beautiful relationship. And this is like how I see it coming up in my mind. Or I have this feeling of like where I'm at right now, it just feels confined. So I'm just envisioning on a plot of several acres of land and a small house. And it's just like there's something about that feels really good. That's not grasping. That's letting the expression of freedom and letting the expression of you arise and present itself of this is what alignment with the external world would look like from that space. And so that's what I'm interested in for you. When you give yourself that space to envision, to create, to actually be still and notice what arises, what does come up? And how does it feel when it's coming from the depth of you rather than just your ideas of this is what I read in a manifestation book, or this is what I see my peers doing, or this is the pressure I feel like I need to do because, there's so much FOMO around. Like all of that can create some like agitated excitement for sure. But if it's not coming from deep alignment, it's often going to manifest itself as like anxiety over time and like an incompleteness. It's just like there's an emptiness that is at the base of it, even though there's maybe like an excitement of like, ooh, I'm creating. So at least when it comes to my teachings, what I want for myself and what I teach is just making sure like as we are moving forward into that creation, we are bringing the fullness of ourselves there, bringing the fullness of ourselves with us. So I hope that gives you a sense of what we're going to be exploring in this retreat. And maybe you don't end up coming, but maybe there was something there that you can take with you on your journey of beginning to orient to what a fresh start could look like. If you do want to go deeper in these topics, I would love to work with you in a retreat-like setting. In my experience, there are a few things that can replace the intimacy of a retreat and the opportunity of a retreat to, again, dedicate for a structured period of time all of your energy in service to an exploration that's meaningful to you. And we get to do it in a beautiful place like Omega. In some ways, we could just not even have a retreat. You could go there and you'd have a wonderful experience. But when we combine it with this inquiry, the setting combined with the teachings really becomes a rich opportunity for inner growth, exploration, shedding of old layers that aren't serving you, and feeling the possibility of the life that wants to move through you. In addition to what you'll get on the retreat, the various teachings and practices, I do want to make sure that you have the resources to support you moving forward. So there's lots of different bonus content that you get after the retreat, like guided meditations. I believe there's over 30 meditations that you'll get. You also get specific visualization-based meditations to cultivate more intuitive guidance, courses related to anxiety, deep sleep, things that might help you work with the level of the mind that sometimes gets anxious and fearful or just struggles falling asleep at night. All of those things are important as we continue to practice self-care and protect this new emergence that wants to come through. So you'll have lots to support you in the journey afterwards. In the sense the retreat won't just end after the weekend, it will continue through the resources that you're given. So there's that to look forward to. All to say, I'd really love to have you there. Omega is where I went on my first retreat, so it holds a special place in my heart, and it would be a gift and a privilege to work with you. Thank you so much for your practice. Lots of love, and take care.